Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are back. This is Garbage Time Takes for episode number 8 of our brief tenure here on the podcast waves. My name is Derek, and as always, my co-hosts with me today are Dennis.
That's me.
As well as Bobby.
And I'm ready to roll.
And just before we kick off the show here, we just want to once again plug our social media accounts on Twitter as well as Instagram. Bobby, would you like to once again remind the people of the Twitter and Instagram handles?
Oh, of course, Derek. It would be my pleasure. You can find us on Twitter at GarbatimeTakes, and you can find us on Instagram at none other than at Garbage Time Takes, and we like to keep our links to our podcast there. We post every time we get a new episode up, so it's a good way to keep track of us. And we also try to do polls weekly for new questions for the podcast.
Alrighty, thank you, Bobby, for that. One more thing to mention with that, we are up to 4, and I repeat 4, 5-star reviews on iTunes for podcasts. So
you love to see it.
We're making it. We're getting there.
So continue, if you enjoy our stuff, continuing to give us those 5-star ratings, and maybe leave a review while you're at it. You'll probably get a shout out here on the podcast by your username, and we'll read off your review on there and sort of give you some appreciation for that. Some sad news, as everyone knows about by now, since we do our podcast on Fridays. The passing of the legendary Kobe Bryant was this past Sunday. Guys, it was a pretty somber day. He was an international figure, really impactful on the sport of basketball, not only in the U.S., but internationally. So all of us here at Garbage Time Takes just wanted to give our condolences, our prayers to all the families involved, but, especially to Kobe's wife, who lost both a husband and a daughter in really a tragic incident. Guys, do you have anything more to add there?
Yeah, I remember sitting down on Sunday. I was watching some college hoops and got a call from a friend. He's like, "Did you hear that Kobe passed away?" And I was in disbelief. I didn't believe it necessarily. He's always someone who tries to play jokes and stuff, and so I just really didn't believe it. But then I looked into it, and the news broke, and it was devastating. It was not a good day. And I'm not a huge NBA fan, but the man was quite impactful, not only on the game of basketball, but on America as a whole, and even the world as a whole, you could make the argument for. So definitely respect to his family as they go through this tough time, and I just echo what Derek said.
Yeah, I know some people, this just brings us into our first discussion point. There's some people out there, particularly NBA players and former NBA players as well, who want to make Kobe the logo. There's the petition that was created that had something along the lines of 2.5 million signatures over the span of 2 or 3 days. So you can tell there are a lot of people who are really passionate about this. But, Bobby, me and you have discussed this a little bit.
Yeah.
In the past few days here, just on our thoughts on whether we think Kobe should be the NBA logo. And me and you were pretty much in agreement that, as impactful and as, great as his legacy was, we just feel like it was a bit of an over-exaggeration to really make him the logo. People say Jerry West doesn't really want to be the logo, so, this would be a great way to honor him. But at the same time, one of the things that I brought up was, what would happen if LeBron were to tragically die, within 3 to 4 years of his retirement and made Kobe the logo? What would we do for him? Would we have to rename the NBA championship trophy at that point? There's only a finite number of things that you can really change and alter, and if we can't really afford to just keep changing things if tragic things happen, God forbid.
And Jerry West in himself, it's a big honor for him to have, and he was deserving of that, especially now seeing his life as an executive, how he's played a role even post being a great basketball player in the early days of the NBA.
For sure.
I just think it's commonplace to kind of get caught up in the moment, and not to say that Kobe's legacy wasn't large and impactful, but I as I said, and as you put it pretty elegantly, I think it's a bit of an exaggeration. We're all a little bit prisoner of the moment, trying to say this is a way we should deal with it, and We've seen plenty of ways that Kobe's been honored around the NBA. Enough as it is, players and teams are retiring his numbers, even though he didn't even play for them. And I think that we're yet to see what the Lakers are going to do today for their own celebration of Kobe. Is their first home game since the passing, the first game since the passing of Kobe.
Since they delayed the Clippers-Lakers game, that would have been scheduled for Tuesday. But continue.
Exactly. And I'm not trying to quantify it, but I think Kobe has seen and even his family's expressed that they've seen an overwhelming outpouring of support. And I don't think it's a diss on Kobe, so to speak, if you don't make him the logo.
Right.
And like you said, you can't jump through hoops for every single person, every single great that dies. You can't, there's only a finite amount of things that you can rename and change. And so I think things should, remain the way they are. But Kobe will get his
he'll
due.
Get his due, yeah.
And he'll, a bona fide Hall of Famer. And, to me, that's the ultimate respect that you can get paid as a player, is to get in the Hall of Fame. And he will, without a doubt, be there one day.
Of course. And, speaking of some of the things, or the thing that the NBA has really been in the headlines for in terms of reformatting the NBA All-Star Game. I don't particularly have too much interest in the All-Star Game compared to the All-Star Skills Challenges. I really enjoy watching the three-point contest and the dunk contest. So the All-Star Game in general doesn't really mean too much to me. But the NBA recently stated that the fourth quarter will be an untimed quarter, and it'll sort of just be like the first team to 24 points, and that'll signal the end of the quarter. In terms of reaction around Twitter and social media that I had seen, a lot of people were really confused by it, and I think rightfully so. I think I'm questioning why the NBA just didn't go with the fan opinion, which was why not just have one team wear 24, one team wear 8, and just have the All-Star Game proceed as normal. This was just sort of like, it was a wacky thing that the NBA sort of came up with, and they use the fans in order to vote for the All-Star players, starters themselves. Why not take up the mass opinion and just, because that's something everyone would want to see. 24 on one side, 8 on the other side, or you could even intermix them if you really felt like it. But this just seemed like just like the NBA trying too hard to come up with its own agenda and its own direction, and it just seemed like a bit of a miss on their part. I don't know if you guys have anything extra to say about that particularly, but that was just something that was rather intriguing as to why they decided to do that.
Just really no need for it.
Yeah.
As you said, you could tell that they were trying to do something to honor Kobe, but it was above and beyond any sort of imaginative thing that anyone could come up with. And sometimes those things are home runs, sometimes there's swing and misses, and I think this one was more of a swing and miss. I'm fine watching just a regular game of basketball. And I'm sure, just wearing the jerseys, and I'm sure teams will take a 24-second violation, 8-second violation, as we've seen league-wide, basically, during the game to honor him again.
Even into the college game as well.
Exactly, even into the college game. But, just a little bit of a swing and a miss here by the NBA, with good intentions, but practicality, it wasn't probably the best thing they could do.
Yeah, totally agree. Dennis, I see you nodding your head over here in agreement. So we'll continue forward. Speaking of the All-Star Game, recently the reserves were announced last night. It came out that Devin Booker and Bradley Beal were left off the reserves. Some may say snub, others can say their teams aren't performing as a whole well enough for them to warrant being on the NBA All-Star team. Saw a graphic, I think, that said Bradley Beal and Devin Booker are the only players ever, I think, to average more than 27 points per game and not make the All-Star team. So that was just sort of rather eye-opening, and I think Devin Booker is sort of the major snub here in compared to Bradley Beal. The guy's averaging 27 points per game, like I mentioned. I think 5 assists, 4 rebounds. I think it's something along those lines. Whereas Chris Paul is averaging 17 points a game, 5 assists, or is it 5 assists and 6 rebounds? It's something along those lines where the only thing between Devin Booker and Chris Paul is 1 rebound. And just because of OKC's success this year, I think NBA coaches voted him over Devin Booker.
17 points, 5 rebounds, 6.5 assists.
Okay, so that's what it is. And I think Devin Booker's 27, 6 assists, 4 rebounds or something like that. They're close enough to where you can make a legitimate case that Booker was snubbed for Chris Paul. Bobby, I know you're a little more in tune with the NBA than Dennis is. So he probably won't say too much, but just your thoughts on Booker and Bradley Beal and the All-Star reserves in general.
I thought that for the most part, things were pretty bog standard as you would expect. Chris Paul definitely did not deserve to be in over Devin Booker, but Chris Paul a little bit more of a fan favorite, I would say probably. Been in the league a long time, and his team is just winning games. So that probably boosted him in over the Phoenix Suns, which haven't quite turned the leaf yet into a winning team.
And they're also rather small market as well.
Exactly. And not to say that Oklahoma City isn't a small market team, but I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I thought one of the biggest snubs was that Jimmy Butler didn't make the starting lineup of the Eastern Conference. I thought he was well deserving of that, especially with the winning trend that Miami has shown this year. But he rightfully made the reserves. Just looking down the list here, I'm very glad to see that Brandon Ingram got his first berth in the All-Stars. That was another, I guess, reserve that you could have said maybe Devin Booker jumps Brandon Ingram because there are 2 technically open slots that they can select any position for. And it looks like one of those might have been Brandon Ingram. I don't necessarily know that to be fact, but pretty bog standard as you would expect. I'd be interested to see what Donovan Mitchell's numbers were this season and how they compared to Devin Booker, just because I don't necessarily remember him having any sort of stellar season. I mean, I'm sure it was standard by his book, and standard by Donovan Mitchell's standards is probably quite good. But I just don't remember hearing anything about him. And I mean, you don't really hear anything about Devin Booker either. But when you look at the stats and you see the stat lines at ends of games, you know who Devin Booker is because the man's consistently scoring 30 points a game.
Yeah, just to answer your question about Donovan Mitchell, pulling up his stats here quick: 24.6 points per game. 4 rebounds, 4 assists. So not even really as good as Devin Booker either. Right.
And they play basically the same position. So once again, you can kind of see that for the reserves here, where the coaches have a little bit more of a say who gets in. Winning is definitely...
Yeah, especially considering the Jazz are 4th in the West.
Definitely getting taken into account a lot more than necessarily individual performance. Which, I mean, you can understand it, but... not necessarily the best player from that season making it in, so I can understand the frustration there. One last player I'll shout out, just looking at the reserves here, Domantas Sabonis from the Pacers making it in at that last spot of the reserves, and he's had a heck of a season for the Pacers. I know they kind of had a little bit of a log jam at center there with him and Miles Turner kind of competing for minutes, and it's glad to see that Sabonis has kind of stepped into his own. Hopefully they... can play off each other more than having to ship one of them out.
Yeah.
But he's played very well this season, and he's got quite a gift for passing the ball as well as scoring and rebounding, obviously, as you expect out of a big man. But shout out to Sabonis there as well.
Yeah, especially the Pacers are probably going to be a team to be reckoned with Oladipo making his first appearance just this week. So watch out for Indiana. And I really like Miami.
Bam Adebayo making the Eastern Conference reserves.
Deservedly so. Bam's been, a really key player for Miami. Really, everyone's sort of stepped up for Miami.
What about Andre Drummond? Where was he at?
Andre Drummond...
I feel like... I don't know what was his stats compared to Bam, but I feel like they do the same kind of thing.
Right, but, it probably just goes back to the same argument you have with Devin Booker. The Pistons aren't really that big of a winning team. Miami is, and Bam Adebayo does his role, and there's a lot of questions, surrounding Andre Drummond's leadership and his effort night in and night out. So maybe that plays a role. I don't know. But yeah, I really like Miami. Could be my bias for Debo, Duncan Robinson, making his way into the starting rotation after doing his due diligence in the G League and being a really key role player for them as a 3-and-D type of guy. But yeah, Miami, I think they only have like one home loss this entire season or something like that, 1 or 2.
I think it's up to 3 or 4 now.
Oh, have they lost a couple more at home? Well, regardless.
The first one was
that buzzer beater.
to Goat James. First one to Goat James. Let's not forget it.
Yeah, it's only been a couple of losses for Miami, I think.
Yeah, but yeah, just the NBA in general. You know, a lot of storylines to look forward, coming into All-Star Weekend, and keep an eye out for Aaron Gordon and Dwight Howard in the dunk contest this year. It's bringing back some
nostalgic memories.
Exactly, bringing back some nostalgia with those names right there. So you know, I think we can leave the NBA behind here and move forward into the other realm of basketball, and that is the college world. As we mentioned last week, college basketball has been crazy this year, and you know, we haven't really had a chance to fully discuss it until now. College basketball, there is no clear frontrunner. There are upsets each and every week. Number one teams drop like flies. You know, we have like 6 or 7 different number one teams within like the first month and a half, 2 months of college basketball at the start of the season. It's just been a wild ride. You have teams that started out hot, dropped completely out of the top 25, and are currently sitting bottom half of their respective conferences. UNC is one of those teams.
Ohio
Michigan's
State.
one of those teams. Ohio Sucks University is one of those teams. So, you know, and then there are some teams that have made some rise. Illinois, you know, I'm keeping, since I watched the Big Ten a lot more, I'll name a lot more Big Ten teams, but Illinois, Rutgers, which is a team that in the beginning of the year I said, watch out for Rutgers because they're going to be something special. So I'm glad to see Rutgers getting into the top 25 and getting some respect on their name, because as you guys can attest to, I was hyping up Rutgers before the season began, saying that, you know, watch out for Rutgers. They're not the same team they used to be. But first, I think we'll start with Dennis, since, you know, you haven't really had a chance to say too much. UC basketball this year, Dennis, we talked about it in the first couple podcasts, haven't really revisited it since. How is UC doing this year?
UC is starting to heat up at the right time, in my opinion. I think they had a rough start to the season. They lost some games that they just really shouldn't have lost.
And the American, Dennis?
Outside of the American.
Okay.
We lost some games outside of the American that were just embarrassing. I think Eastern Illinois or something dumb like that. And I think that just is a signal of the rough transition period with John Brandon coming in as the head coach out of Northern Kentucky, not necessarily on the same page with the players at the beginning of the season with the departure of Mick Cronin. A lot of these guys were used to that system, completely new system. It's nice to see the Bearcats scoring points this year, not as a diss at Mick Cronin, but his philosophy was always defense, and that works to some extent. But you got to put points on the board to win the game. You know, at the end of the day, you got to score. And I think I've really enjoyed seeing them do that more this year. I mean, they put up. I listened to a game on the radio a couple nights ago. They put up 89 on Temple, which is insane for UC basketball. I can't remember the last time they put up 89 points on an American Conference opponent. That was decent at all. And so, you know, we've won, We've won 3 straight since losing to ranked Memphis a couple weeks ago. Yes, their games in the American Conference. Yes, the American Conference isn't that strong. I'm sure my co-host will be more than happy to point that out as soon as I'm done talking.
I was going to say, Dennis, you better keep talking before I interject, because I definitely got something to say.
But for a team that is, you know, lost some seniors last year, and had a rough start to the season under a new head coach, his first year coaching in any conference above the Horizon League, which is, you know, what it is. He's got the Bearcats in 3rd place in the American Conference, which is, you know, a first-round bye in the American tournament.
Okay.
And so it'll be interesting to see what they do. I think there's a chance they get in an at-large bid come March if they win a few more games, but I still think their best shot is just winning the conference tournament outright, which I do think they can do. I think everyone in this conference is beatable. We've seen Houston lose. We've seen Wichita State lose. Memphis has dropped out of the top 25. And so I think this one's open, and I think the Bearcats are heating up at the right time, and at least that's what I hope. I don't think they're going to be, you know, NCAA tournament champions by any means, but I think they've made a better impression on me than I expected back in November.
All right, Dennis. Well, I would just love to point out that early in the conference schedule season, UC happened to lose to the worst team in
the American Conference.
We did.
Tulane.
The Green Wave.
The Tulane Green Wave beat Cincinnati.
2-6 record in the American Conference.
So just to point out the weakness, and I would agree with you, Dennis, that UC probably does have a chance to win the conference because of its utter mediocrity.
Let's not forget the Memphis that just dropped out of the top 25 put a smacking down on Cincinnati by a double-digit margin.
That's right.
Just a few short weeks ago.
And they don't even have James Wiseman.
And here's the thing: we're preaching defense, but the third to last, tied in record right now in the American with Tulane, Temple Owls put up 82 points on them, and they needed 89 to just squeak it out.
Well, no, like I said, the philosophy has been changing this year. That's a Mick Cronin thing. I don't necessarily know that it's a John Brandon thing, and personally, I like to see that. As far as the Tulane game goes, I think that's just it really speaks to the inexperience of this team. It certainly has a weakness. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're without weakness because they certainly are.
Yeah, it was earlier this month. So
there's a lot of early games that they had that they really should have won. They shot themselves in the foot.
Dennis, I hate to point this out, but you've beat exactly one team in the top half of the American basketball conference right now. You've only played one team. So you're 1-0 against the top half of the American, but you are certainly... You've got 2 losses right now, and both of them were to bottom half teams.
Well, that'll be something that I'll be interested to see as we finish out through February and March. Is we got a lot of big games coming up. I mean,
Wichita State
tomorrow we play Houston.
That's what I was about to bring up. Was that Cincinnati's got a lot of resume building opportunities ahead. They'll have number 21 Houston tomorrow.
Yep,
they'll have number 23 Wichita State next Thursday.
We got to win.
They'll get to play both Wichita State and Houston again this season. So they definitely have plenty of opportunities to build upon a resume that some may not think is all that strong at the moment.
We'll see what they're made of in the next month or so.
But
we'll definitely see what they're made of.
Definitely they, as we transition here, have been able to do something that Michigan has not, and that's stay in the top half of their conference through the end of January. Much to my own despair. And
yes.
Exactly. The loss of Isaiah Livers in early January to a team that, he didn't even really technically need to play against, that hurt a lot, and he's only played in one game since, and then re-injured himself in that game. So his loss, coupled with, just the Big Ten being so hard this season, it's got depth like I've never seen before in my lifetime. And, the fact that Illinois and Rutgers are at the top rather than Purdue and Wisconsin and Michigan being at the top, sort of speaks to just the overall strength of the Big Ten. I think CBS and Ken Pom had 10 of the 14 teams, if the tournament ended today, would be virtual locks to be in the tournament. I think that's the most in any conference. So the Big Ten is really deep this year. And so far, my predictions that we made in episode 1 or 2 of the podcast, where I thought Michigan would be a bottom half Big Ten team, much to my own despair again, has unfortunately come true up to this point in the season. We had some really strong early wins. We're the only team to beat Gonzaga this year, which says something. But at the same time, you got to take care of your home court, and we've dropped a couple there. There's
got to win on the road.
Got to win on the road, which we haven't done yet in the Big Ten. We did. We got Nebraska. Thank the Lord, we got Nebraska.
2-8.
But which Xavier Simpson was suspended for, and so you don't really see Michigan teams have issues like this late in the season. So it's a little bit discouraging, but this year I think it's just more of a building block transition year for Juwan. I'll be more than happy to see if we do end up making the tournament, but they've got their work cut out for them. They're going to have to play MSU again. They're going to have to play Maryland. They've already dropped both of their games to Illinois, dropped a game at home to Penn State. So really it's just been tough sledding for us. And hopefully we can get back on the right track before it's too late. The season's got a long way to go. Got another half of the conference scheduled to be played, but they're going to have to regroup and really get it together because it's not looking too great. Bobby, your thoughts with MSU and their tremendous play, and they're really coming together, aren't they?
Well, you love to see them at the top of the Big Ten. I mean, any fan would love to see their team at the top of the conference, and that's where we're currently at right now. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a bit nervous that we could get past here at some point. It's just such a close race right now. Really not much room for error. Luckily, the team that's right on our heels, the Illinois Fighting Illini, they're on a 7-game win streak, but we were the last team that beat them, I believe, in our one matchup. I'm looking forward to the second half of the season. I think that we'll trip a few times. We've got some tough matchups coming up. Penn State, Michigan rivalry game there. You never know what could happen.
In Ann Arbor,
Illinois, Maryland, Iowa again, Maryland, Penn State.
Lots of ranked teams in there.
So there's only a few games here that aren't going to be against currently ranked teams. Even finishing up the season with Ohio State, that could be a team that's looking desperately for a win to get them in.
For sure.
Nip and tuck league right now, and I can't help but wondering how Nebraska and Northwestern would fare if they were in the American Conference. Just an absolute log jam right now in the Big Ten. Barely any separation. I mean, there's a team with almost every record possible.
Yeah.
So a game win here or there, dropping one has big repercussions, and a lot of these teams haven't been able to put too many streaks together outside of Illinois, really, and Maryland. Everybody else is at a win one, lost one. It's back and forth. I'd like to shout out Rutgers, who have not dropped a home game yet this season, 15-0.
The Rack, man, I'm telling you. I told you.
But they've only won one game on the road, which is a little bit of an issue. But no, even the top teams on the road have only won 4 games. Yeah. Keep looking for a lot of switching up to go out in the Big Ten. You never know quite at the end of the fray who is going to be on top. So it's anybody's game at this point. I wish I could say that MSU had solidified their lock is probably going to finish number 1, but they're going to have to. They control their own destiny, and they're going to have to beat some of these teams off.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that the Big Ten standings today are most definitely not going to look like that once we reach Big Ten.
For sure.
Dennis?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is just such a great basketball conference right now. I mean, it always has been, but this year especially, you got so many good teams, and they're kind of beating each other up, which is kind of what you're seeing. Not necessarily ranked high in the rankings. Number 14 Michigan State coming into this week is the highest ranked team in the conference, but they have 6 ranked teams, and like someone was saying, you have 10 teams that are virtual locks right now to make the NCAA tournament, which is just insane. And so I do think this is a really strong conference. I can't wait to see it come Big Ten tournament time. I think that's going to be easily the best conference tournament that we see this year.
Probably.
And I would venture to say that you're going to have a Big Ten team in the national championship game this year. I do think that's a strong possibility. I think the whole college basketball as a whole is kind of weak. I'm not necessarily someone who... Just so many teams. I'm not necessarily someone who follows Big Ten basketball as much, but I've been impressed by everything I've seen so far. And honestly, there's a lot of teams out there that just aren't strong enough to win it this year. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I would venture, you think we'll have a team in the national championship. I think you might even see, 5 or 6 teams in the Sweet 16.
Oh, for sure.
From the Big Ten, and you might even get 3 or 4 teams in the Elite 8. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see a Big Ten team in the Natty, and I sure as heck won't be surprised to see 1, maybe even 2
in the Final
Four. So yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how it all plays out from here. I'll be excited watching forward. But yeah, I think everyone can be in agreement here that college basketball, the tournament, it's going to be something special this year, and we may see a 1 team fall to a 16-team seed this year. I remember
certainly think so.
When Virginia lost, we said there's no way we ever see that again. Well, I think this year it could be different. I think we might see a 16 beat a 1 or a 15 beat a 2, just with the way college basketball has been this year. Dennis, I think now is as good a time as ever. We brought up UC, which is one of your Cincinnati teams.
That's right.
The MLB free agency this year up to this point has been relatively dead in terms of splash signings, and I think that's been more so just due to the lack of big-name free agents this year. I think you can agree with that.
Sure.
But the only real big name out there that was able to be reeled in was Garrett Cole, and he went to the Yankees. I think
surprise.
Yeah, really. But one team that has been making waves and making splashes, and some of them are cannonball splashes, other ones are pencil dips, but all of them have been building. And that team is none other than your Cincinnati Reds, Dennis. You've got to be ecstatic at this point.
I am absolutely ecstatic. That's the perfect adjective. I couldn't have picked a better one.
Go ahead and take it away, Dennis.
All right, we'll do. I mean, I love to hear you guys' comments as well, but this is a team that I follow pretty passionately. Been a Reds fan my entire life, just as I've been a Bengals fan my entire life. That's not going as well right now.
Yet.
Not yet, yes. But the Reds, they have so much good history going back to the 70s and the Big Red Machine, even as soon as 2010, 2012, when we made some playoff appearances with Jay Bruce, Joey Votto, Brandon Phillips, Todd Frazier. And that crew, things have transitioned. We went into a rebuild session that I thought was never going to end after the 2013 season. And it certainly seems like we're finding our way out of it. I really love what Dick Williams, the general manager, has been doing in Cincinnati. He built some guys up, rookies, guys that he got in the draft through the minor league system. And he found out what he had, and now he's going and making a splash in the free agent market, which is something that the Reds haven't done in a very long time. I read a stat the other day that the Reds have committed over $164 million in free agents this offseason.
Okay.
And the most that they had ever committed in an offseason in the 2010 to 2019 seasons combined was like 60-something. It's insane. Like, they're spending way more money than they're used to. And maybe that comes back and hurts them, trying to bring in a whole bunch of pieces and it doesn't quite mesh. But my opinion is that they're doing exactly what you should do. You built from the ground up, you built within the organization, and you go and get the pieces you need. We have a really strong starting pitching rotation. I think Derek might make a few arguments against that.
We'll get into that a little bit.
We can get into that for sure.
I'll let you round out your...
All right, sure. I'll wrap it up. But, they signed Mike Moustakas. At first I was kind of confused. Mike Moustakas, traditionally a third baseman, has been for most of his playing career, but he's making a transition to second base, which is where he's expected to play for us. Also the signing recently of Nicholas Castellanos, which is a great signing. Those two guys alone combined for over 62 home runs last year, and now they're playing Great American Ballpark, which is one of my big arguments. I think the Reds have done a great job. You can make an argument for that, but the strategy from Dick Williams is we're going to hit home runs. Yep. We're going to take advantage of the fact that we play in a small ballpark, which it is a small ballpark, and I'll give you that. That's for sure.
I was going over it with Bobby. The down the lines Wrigley compared to
it's
Great
crazy.
American is
Yeah.
about 28 feet. I think I ended up saying
the ball flies out in Cincinnati, and that's why you go sign guys who can hit the big fly.
That's right.
You've got Eugenio Suarez at the hot corner, who, as Bobby will love to point out, just injured himself in a pool accident. But he should be ready to go for the regular season. I mean, he was...
Did he drop 40 last year?
He was 41.
Yeah.
He dropped 41 last year. Now you've got Moustakas, who hit 35, not in Great American Ballpark. Castellanos, who hit 27, not in Great American Ballpark.
But also the leader in doubles.
And also the leader in doubles. You've got a lot of guys in this lineup, you go 1 through 8, that can hit the ball out of the ballpark. And that's what you have to do if you're Cincinnati. You're taking advantage of your home field. Might hurt you on the road when those become outs to the warning track.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to play 81 games in Great American Ballpark.
Yes,
and
you are.
So if you can win the majority of those, you're going to put yourself in a good spot. So I really liked what Dick Williams has done, focusing on the pitching staff and focusing on guys who can hit the big fly. It's exciting for baseball. It's exciting for Cincinnati, and it's exciting for me. So,
Dennis, one more thing before I just give my intake, and I guess we'll use this as our first debate point, really.
Sure.
And if Bobby wants to step in, I know your baseball knowledge is a little bit limited, but if you want to jump in at some point, you can. But where do you think the Cincinnati Reds end up in at the end of the season in terms of the NL Central Division?
I think at least part of it for me is the offseason's not over quite yet. We've kind of got a logjam in the outfield, so I'll be interested if they trade away a piece, maybe Nick Senzel, upcoming outfielder that we have, maybe even Jesse Winker, another one of those younger guys, to bring in somebody else, perhaps some bullpen help. I think the weakness of this team right now is definitely the bullpen. Don't have a lot of guys down there that can come into the game and, you have confidence they're going to shut the door. So that's certainly a weakness I'd love to see them add. But as far as how they're going to finish at the end of the season, I would love to see them get a wild card spot. I think,
Okay.
I don't necessarily expect them to win the Central. I think they could win the Central. But my hope would be that, they're over 500. I think that's necessary. And I really would hope that they're able to squeak in a wild card spot. I don't think you can set the expectation too high just because they were 12 under, last season. And so, you can't turn it around that much that quickly. If they do, that's great. But I'm not going to say they're going to be the best team of the National League or anything crazy like that. You got to start somewhat small.
Now, Dennis, before I get into my predictions of the NL Central, this is something Bobby's going to be able to appreciate because he knows my feelings about this certain individual. The Reds yesterday signed none other to their bullpen, Pedro Strop.
Oh my God!
The Reds signed Pedro Strop. I tell you what, I have never been so happy to see a man get off my Cubs team. He was an absolute bumfool last year. Every time he came into the game, it seemed like he gave up a home run. And there were games where I was watching in my room where I told Bobby to come and I said, Bobby, Pedro Strop is pitching. You got to watch this. And what do you know? Gives up a home run, gives up the lead, absolutely blows it. So, Dennis, good luck. Because that was one of the happiest days of my recent memory in terms of what the Cubs have been doing, which is absolutely nothing this free agency.
Very true. Very true.
But, yeah, I look forward...
No one with more swagger on the mound than Pedro Strop. And I love to watch him.
I just hope that...
I'd love to see him turn it around.
I hope that,
right the ship.
I hope, unfortunately for you, Dennis, that if the Reds get the lead on the Cubs in a game and Pedro Strop gets a chance to get on the mound, that the Cubs rough him up just as they should. So,
like I said, this Reds team weakness right now is its bullpen, and the events of yesterday did not change that. I will stick with my statement there. If we're going to lose games, it's going to be because the bullpen doesn't get the job done.
Yeah, for me personally, I think the Reds finished third at the worst this year. I see them as a top 3 team. I very much think that they could take the number 1 spot. I also think the number 2 spot is reasonable. I can almost guarantee you that they finish over 500 this season.
Anything under 500 would be a disappointment.
And there are a lot of people, that I've seen on some of the MLB posts saying all of this just to finish in 4th place or all of this just to finish in last place. But, I don't see that with this Reds team this year. They sort of came on late last year and really started putting some things together. So watch out for the Cincinnati Reds. I would not be surprised in the slightest to end up seeing them win the division. But there was one more thing that me and you sort of had a disagreement on, Dennis, and that was the strength of the starting rotation.
Yep.
So, do you think that the Reds rotation 1 to 5 is strong, or what do you think exactly about your rotation? Because I know I have my thoughts.
I think it can be strong from 1 to 5. I think it's really highlighted by Luis Castillo and Sonny Gray. Those are the 2 guys who kind of head that rotation. They proved that last year. Sonny Gray had another fantastic season. His ERA last year was 2.87 in 31 games. But I think the big strength of this rotation is it's deep and they stay consistent throughout the season. I mean, Luis Castillo started 32 games, Gray 31, Anthony DeSclafani 31. And so you've got a lot of guys who are going to pitch, routinely. They're not, crapping out on you, for lack of a better word.
You're leaving out Trevor Bauer.
Well, Trevor Bauer, and I'm sure you're going to point this out, had a rough time upon his transition to Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's a different beast in the NL Central than the AL Central, isn't it?
It's a big difference for Trevor, and I think, he had a rough time with the transition. I'd love to see him do better, but he's still one of those guys. He's a big name.
He is.
And you got to believe that he's going to work and get better. I don't think he's the guy who's just going to be like, well, crap, my career's over. He's going to come out and he's going to do his best. He's going to make adjustments. And he's done it for long enough now that you can trust that he's going to be able to do that. So I do hope he comes back out and does well. Also worth mentioning is Wade Miley, a free agent signing.
Mr. 3.98 ERA.
Yes, 3.98 ERA, 33 games.
Did I say 3.98? Almost 4 runs a game? Okay, just want to make sure I mentioned that.
He's
giving up almost 4 runs a game.
Almost 4 runs a game.
And the only reason he had so many wins last year was because the Astros' offense is absolutely vaunted.
Well, sure.
As a starter?
Yes.
The wins and losses columns as starting pitchers is a completely flawed statistic. So don't get me started on that. I didn't even write down wins and losses because I knew it wasn't worth mentioning. But you got to remember, Sonny Gray came in last year and he wasn't expected to do well. I mean, he was coming off a season in which he had struggled mightily.
The AL East is a different beast than the AL West.
That's true. It is, for sure. So I'm excited for this rotation. I know you have your opinions on it. I think it's one of the strongest in the NL Central, certainly.
Dennis. Blasphemous. Dennis, so we've already pointed out that Trevor Bauer did not have the greatest year, am I right?
Well, sure, but it's still Trevor Bauer.
And then you got Wade Miley, who pitched to a 3.98. Now, that's not necessarily horrible by any means, but I wouldn't necessarily call it strong. I mean, that's almost 4 runs a game. You're relying pretty heavily on your offense to get you 5 at that point. And also,
offense can.
At the bare minimum.
At the bare minimum. And Anthony DeSclafani had a 3.89, which is also basically a 4. So I can't agree with you that it's the strongest rotation in that NL Central.
Whose rotation's better?
I would argue that the St. Louis Cardinals have a very strong rotation. Jack Flaherty's really good. Mr. Mustache. What's his name, Dennis? Help me out here. You remember?
I'm blanking. Hold on.
I
gotta find out now.
What's his name?
For the Cardinals?
Yeah, the Cardinals starting pitcher with the old-fashioned handlebar mustache. Do you remember or no?
You say handlebar mustache, I just think Sam LeCure, and that's way off. So
here, we'll get it here.
Yeah.
Apologize for our lack of preparation. All right, Miles Mikolas, yes.
Oh man,
Miles Mikolas. So let's get in.
Give me a break.
Let's look.
Wade Miley isn't looking like anything compared to him.
Let's look at the Cardinals' pitching stats here. I guess they're not as good as I thought. Jack Flaherty was a 2.75. Mikolas had a bit of a rough year. He was at 4.16. Dakota Hudson had a 3.35.
Okay, there you go.
Adam Wainwright, he's old, 4.19. Mike Waka, 4.76. But Carlos Martinez in the pen had a 3.17. Giovanni Gallegos had a 2.31. And John Brebbia had a 3.59. And all of those guys at some point, I think, managed to get themselves into the starting rotation. Just pulling up the Cubs starting pictures real quick. We have a lot of big names, but they had a rough year last year.
Sure.
Lester, Hendricks, Darvish, Quintana, and then, the fifth spot was sort of up in the air. Sometimes it was Montgomery, sometimes it was Chatwood. But yeah, just looking at, the Cubs starting pitching with Lester as our ace, Darvish at the 2, Hendricks at the 3. Darvish had a 3.98. Kyle Hendricks 3.46. Cole Hamels last year had a 3.81. But then, Lester was at 4.46 and Jose Quintana was at an absolutely abysmal 4.68. So far, Dennis, you've been right, and it may be one of the strongest rotations in the NL Central.
We'll see how it turns out.
At least
I do like to hear the word Dennis, you might be right. That's good.
At least based on last year's stats, even Tyler Chatwood had a 3.76. I'm not entirely,
He doesn't even have a man on the force.
Yeah, I'm aware. I don't know what your top 2 in Luis Castillo's ERA was. And,
Castillo's was a 3.4,
okay.
And Sonny Gray was 2.87
Ooh.
last year. Yep.
All right, Dennis. So. I take it back. The Reds do have one of the strongest rotations, barring any significant acquisitions from the Cubs, which I don't foresee happening anyway. And then before we get into our Super Bowl preview, before we close the show with Super Bowl and our Right Bench Ballers, we'll just give a brief shout out to the Detroit Tigers, as they will likely be one of the worst teams in the MLB again.
Go Tigers.
Yes!
Go Tigers!
I can root for them because they're terrible.
So for the Super Bowl preview, we're going to intertwine that this week with the Garbage Time Takes Your Money gambling show segment.
You love it.
It just makes sense since our gambling segment, our quote-unquote gambling segment, I should say, is, going to be about the Super Bowl. So this Sunday, as everyone who knows sports is aware, the 49ers will be playing the Chiefs in Miami for the chance to be Super Bowl champions of the world. For me personally, I know I have the 49ers winning this one. I think, everyone likes to call Jimmy Garoppolo a game manager, which I think is fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a game manager. It's better than being an injury-prone, turnover-prone quarterback. He plays off his run game, which is very strong with the two-headed monster. Technically three.
Yeah.
Raheem Mostert, Matt Breida, Tevin Coleman, three
Monsters.
guys that can all really run the ball. Raheem Mostert, especially as of late, has been absolutely tearing it up. Deebo Samuel,
Love that man.
as one of the wide receivers out there on the edge. George Kittle might be one of the top 3 tight ends in the league, if not top 2. Going up against maybe the other top 2 tight end, Travis Kelce, whose offense is also led by Patrick Mahomes with Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins on the edges. And Damian Williams at running back. So I think you've got 2 pretty high-powered offenses. But only one of those teams really has a defense, and that's San Francisco. You got Nick Bosa holding it down back there, as well as the rest of the guys, the defensive line. You got Richard Sherman, who, you can argue, is he really that great of a corner if he can only play zone? I don't know, between his man and his zone coverage schemes. But the fact of the matter is nobody wants to throw Richard Sherman's way if you can avoid it, especially in zone coverage. But I think for me personally, and we'll get into this in the gambling show in just a couple minutes here, I have San Francisco winning by 6. I think the defense is going to relatively keep Kansas City under control, as long as they don't have really any severe mental mistakes like Houston did, turning it over inside, your own side of the field, fumbling kickoff returns. I don't see San Francisco doing that. And so that'll be my pick.
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree with the pick. The old cliche, defense wins championships. And San Francisco certainly has the better defense here. We'll see if that turns out to be true, but I certainly have no reason to doubt it. Obviously, Kansas City's offense is quite high power. They can get you at any time. Mm-hmm. But they haven't faced a defense like this. It's going to be a tough go for Patrick Mahomes. We'll really see what he's made of. And then on the offensive side for San Francisco, I think they're stronger than people give him credit for. I don't think people give Jimmy G enough credit. Is he, the best quarterback in the league? Certainly not, but he does his job. He gets the ball to the playmakers that he has on his roster. Mentioned the 3-headed monster running back along with Deebo and George Kittle. Mm-hmm. He does what he needs to. Yep. And I think he's going to be able to do enough to win a Super Bowl behind that defense and all the pieces that San Francisco has put there for him. I think it'll be a really, really good game. Yeah. Considering Casey's offense, San Francisco's defense, that'll be some of the most fun drives I think will be with that matchup, and we'll see how it goes. But I agree with San Francisco. I think I'll take San Fran by 4.
Bobby, what do you got?
Bobby coming off an extremely blistering hot week last week. 3-0. I told you to lay the lumber.
Yeah, this is the man we got to listen to.
I told you to lay the lumber on the first quarter. Memphis versus Pistons. That Memphis was going to win, and over all 3 of them hit. So I hope you bet with me. But anyway, looking at this game, I think that there is. I'm with you guys on this one. I don't see Kansas City coming out on top in this. I'm honestly quite shocked that the favorite is technically Kansas City based on the bettors. I'm taking San Francisco. I would take them on the money line if I were you. And I don't need the points. I would suggest that looking at the over under at 54.5, I would bet the under. I don't think it's going to get there. Especially the first half under. Taking a look at that again, that's at 26 or 25.5 technically. I think we're looking at about a 17-7 ball game at half.
I agree with that.
So I'm thinking that we're not going to get there. I don't know who will be winning. Doesn't matter at that point if you're betting the over and under. But I just foresee Kansas City hitting one big one to open the game up 7-0, and then San Francisco really settling in and rattling off some drives. Of course, as everybody says, if this game is won by Kansas City, you know it. We'll all come back to their quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. I really don't see another scenario, but we've been surprised before. So lay the lumber on San Francisco, lay the lumber on the under, and win some money this week.
Yeah, I'm actually with you there. I'm also taking the under for the total of the game. What is it, 54.5 right now?
54.5.
And so that means to get the over, you would need a 28-27 victory. At the minimum, you can go opposite ways from there, but just to give yourself a bit of a vantage point to go off of. And I'll take the under at halftime too. I'm right there with you. I think people aren't giving San Francisco's defense or their offense enough credit. And just to think that both teams are going to reach that 27-point mark, especially with only a 1.5 favorite for Kansas City, that means Vegas thinks it's going to be tight. I'm in total agreement with you. I can foresee, like I said, I got San Francisco by 6, so I'm taking 27-21. That's going to be my score. But yeah, what do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I mean, I just kind of have a slight difference. I took San Fran by 4. I'll go 24-20. I don't see it getting there either. I would agree with you guys on the under. It's going to be more of a defensive game, basically because I think San Francisco is going to be able to make it that. Mm-hmm. And that's really going to be able to set the tone for the rest of the game. And their offense is, not high flying, but I think they're going to be able to get enough, get the job done, like I like to say. And so I agree with you guys.
I think I've got 30-20 San Francisco. I think that San Francisco's offense is going to get a little bit more done than we expect, and I'm really envisioning some mistakes by Kansas City. I think they'll potentially at the end of the game, or towards the end, Patrick Mahomes go out there try to do too much, and try to bring his team back because they'll be down. At least in my estimation, they'll be down. Mm-hmm. And when you're down and trying to get it back with a high flying offense, sometimes you put the ball in harm's way. And maybe Richard Sherman comes up with something. Maybe the pass rush comes up with a fumble of some sort. But don't expect. Keep an eye on that turnover margin because that will definitely be important.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And then one last word before we reach everyone's favorite segment, the Right Bench Ballers. Just want to give a brief shout out to CMU football because CMU is going to get a Super Bowl winner out of this game. Eric Fisher, former number 1 overall pick back in 2013 to the Kansas City Chiefs, and also Joe Staley, who was another first-round pick. It was in the mid-20s to San Francisco back in, I think, 2007, 2006, somewhere around there. So, CMU is going to get a Super Bowl champion, and I think that's going to be pretty cool. And I think it'd be especially cool if Joe Staley would get one just because he's been with the Niners organization for such a long time and has really seen the ups and downs of it. So yeah, let's get into the Right Bench Ballers. Is there anyone here who really wants to get theirs out first, or do you want me to start it off?
Go for it, Dirk.
All right, I'll start it off then. So my Right Bench Baller for the week is going to be Luke Cornett. He is number 2 power forward for the Chicago Bulls out of Vanderbilt in his second season.
No, I just like to point out that number 2 power forward is a little bit of a over-exaggeration because
I meant his jersey number.
Oh, it's number 2. I was going to say.
No, he's definitely not the number 2 power forward.
All right. My bad on that one.
Yeah, I should have been a little more clear. He is jersey number 2, a power forward for the Chicago Bulls. Currently on the season, he is averaging 14 minutes per game, 4.9 points, and nothing else really special outside of that. However, over his last 10 games, he's been averaging 8.3 points with 23 minutes a game, so really making a name for himself. But the real, game and performance I wanted to point out for him was earlier this week, Monday against San Antonio in a 1-point win. Man had 31 minutes, shot 100% from the free throw line, 40% from 3. Had 9 rebounds, 12 points, 3 assists, 1 block, and a steal. So really, covering every column in the stat sheet. Luke Cornett out of Vanderbilt for the Chicago Bulls, my Right Bench Baller.
You want to take it away next, Dennis?
Sure, let's do it. So this week I have UCLA junior guard Chris Smith in his game versus number 20 ranked Colorado. And that was played last night. A UCLA victory, which has been few and far between for the Bruins this season.
Dennis, before you get going, who's their head coach?
Mick Cronin. It's Mick Cronin. Former UC Bearcat head coach.
Does that give you some joy to see them struggle a little bit?
It does. It does. I couldn't lie. It does see me. It does bring me some joy to see them struggle a little bit. I think Mick made a huge mistake going to Los Angeles.
That's right. You told me, Dennis.
It's not up to me, obviously. I think he was chasing the dollar amount, and he had a great program built in Cincinnati. We miss you, Mick, but bum move. That's for sure. Anyway, as I was getting thanks for pointing that out, by the way, Derek.
No problem.
As I was saying, UCLA, I will give Chris Smith the highlight this week. He put up a career-high 30 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 steals. In the effort, he's been averaging 13 points, 5 boards, and a steal per game. So far and away better than his season averages. He's come a long way from his freshman year, but I think I was deserving of a right bench baller in a defeat of a ranked team, which is the first time, I think, UCLA since 2015 has beat a ranked opponent. I wanted to see. I saw that last night. I could be wrong, so fact check me on that. But it's been a while for the Bruins.
Alrighty. Well, I'm looking a little bit far and away and abroad because, as many of you guys know, during the winter we're a little bit limited on material for right bench baller outside of basketball. And I wanted to highlight somebody who's truly making an impact off the bench here. And we're going to the country of Germany, folks. We're going to the Bundesliga soccer. If any of you follow this, we're going with a name none other than Erling Haaland, a forward for Borussia Dortmund, a team in the Bundesliga. Now, Erling had previously played for Salzburg, which is in the Austrian league, a very small and minor league in Europe. Nothing compared to the Bundesliga. Even if you don't know anything about soccer, that's all you need to know. In some backstory here, Haaland had played against many big clubs in the Champions League, which is a very big international European cup. And in 6 games starting for them, this is not why he's getting the right bench baller, but in 6 games in the Champions League, he scored 8 goals and had 1 assist. So absolutely lighting the world on fire. If you're averaging a goal a game, you are doing something very, very well in soccer. But then people were starting to realize that this guy maybe is a little bit better than they're giving him credit for, and he transferred to Borussia Dortmund, the bigger club. And in 2 domestic games in the Bundesliga for Haaland, he did not start either of those games. He was subbed on both times. He had 6 shots and 5 goals in two appearances for Borussia Dortmund. Has not even played a full 90 minutes for the club yet. In his debut, he had a hat trick. He's also 19 years old. Did I fail to mention that? Which made him the youngest player in Bundesliga history to ever score a hat trick. Just far and away making a huge difference for a team that's fighting to stay towards the top of the table in the Bundesliga right now. But huge shout out to Erling Haaland, making a name for himself out of the Austrian league, coming to international play, and then the Bundesliga and making a tremendous impact.
All right, well, there you have it for this week's show. Just a brief recap of our right bench ballers: Luke Cornett of the Chicago Bulls, Chris Smith from UCLA, and Erling Haaland out of Borussia Dortmund out in the Bundesliga. Well, guys, I think that one's going to wrap it up for this show, episode number 8 of Garbage Time Takes. Once again, we just want to encourage you to leave a 5-star rating on iTunes if you'd be so kind to do so.
Follow us on Twitter and Instagram.
Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Garb Time Takes on Instagram.
On Twitter.
Oh, on Twitter. Okay. And then Garbage Time Takes on Instagram. There we go. That's why I usually let Bobby do it, because he's the one that knows. I think
the social media expert.
Also, keep an eye out. I think Bobby, he might end up putting a Super Bowl predictions poll out on our Instagram, if he would be so kind as to do that, just to give you some more interaction with us. But at the end of the day, we just want to wish you a good, safe weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and we will see you next week. So if you guys are ready, I'm ready. On a 1.
And a 2.
And a 3.
Peace.